I'll be honest with you. 3 years ago, I was in exactly the same position as you. Scrolling through the internet, looking at every video on YouTube and asking in every Facebook group for just help with my reactive dog. I just wanted to find something that was going to help him. Everything I read was to avoid triggers, use a higher value treat, buy this lead, buy that harness, buy that tool, whatever it was, and still absolutely nothing worked. And that might sound very similar to your sort of situation. You've got a cupboard full of slip leads and harnesses and head halties and this collar and that collar, and none of them have worked. And then you've went and bought all like the calming treats, the high value treats, distraction work, you've watched every video from Zach George. None of these things have worked. Being told to always avoid the trigger, to cross the street, to go a different direction, doesn't actually solve the problem whatsoever. All it does is it keeps you stuck in a cycle and you're never able to get out of it. And actually, it's making your dog's reactivity worse. I just remember feeling this absolute dread of taking him out for a walk. All I wanted to do was go for a nice, enjoyable walk in the park, go down to the beach without the worry of that if we see a dog, there's going to be a kickoff. But I couldn't. So every time we went for a walk, there was always that stress that there was another dog there. It got to a point where my wife didn't feel comfortable walking the dog because of the potential risk of something happening. And for me, I felt like I was failing him, I was doing something wrong, and just life just wasn't what I envisioned when I first brought this little puppy home. So Fraser's reactivity started when he hit about 1, and up until then, we'd done everything we thought was necessary. We had taught him recall, we'd done loads of training, he knew every trick under the sun. But one thing we did do, which we thought was the right thing to do, was taking him to puppy parties, puppy socialization, getting around dogs his age. And realistically, that was not the best thing to do. He would come off quite confident in certain situations, but then there was often the dog who was that a little bit too pushy, and he didn't have the confidence to say, hey, I'm not happy with this. Looking back on things now, I can see it. At the time, unfortunately, I just didn't see this behavior playing out. So what I found was then as he got older, he found this confidence to start telling dogs to kind of back off before they had the opportunity to do anything to him. And this then applied to every dog, and it got worse and worse and worse. And this was the cycle that I ended up being stuck in. And what I ended up doing was essentially starting to micromanage every little interaction that there was. Anytime we saw a dog, I was micromanaging, trying to get him to focus back onto me, trying to do something else, chuck some food on the floor, anything. Every time a dog came over, I was dragging him away, putting pressure on that lead. And as well as that, he was still struggling with lead pulling. He was pulling me all over the place. Yes, he had opportunity to have fun and be off lead with good recall, but still when there was a dog, he would have a blow up, and this was a big problem we had. So something I did fail to acknowledge was his genetic fulfillment. Basically, as a spaniel, he had a crazy high drive for a tennis ball, and all we were doing was just throwing this ball and wasting perfect opportunities to start teaching him something more constructive. That was a big area in which I didn't realize how important it was. And once I started implementing some work with him, it really showed a massive difference in his behavior. So of course, it came to a point in which I kind of hit rock bottom. Something happened which really drove home of I need to do something about this, because I do not want to go another year of him being like this, which isn't fun for him and it's not fun for us. So something had to change, something had to happen. So I did the one thing that everybody gets told to do when you have a spaniel or any kind of gun dog, and that is go to a gun dog trainer. So I did, and I learned some incredible breed fulfilling exercises and games, retrieve work and hunt work, but it still didn't really help me with giving me any further forward towards helping his reactivity. Unfortunately, it was a little bit more of a yank and crank, where it was a case of he just got a correction for doing something wrong with no real feedback as to why he did something wrong or an alternative. It was just a case of you're in a sit and a stay and you're just going to get corrected if you lunge or bark towards it. Realistically, that wasn't helping the problem. It was help it a little bit, but long term, it wasn't solving anything. So I thought, fuck it, I'm just going to have to kind of go this alone again. And I poured my heart and soul into researching and finding ways in which to help him and his reactivity. And throughout this process, I did find some uncomfortable truths. One of the first things are tools aren't magic. So I was taught that by using the slip lead was what was going to solve the reactivity. And I was getting frustrated as to why, even though he was reacting and I was correcting him, things weren't improving, things weren't changing. That's when I realized, okay, there's got to be something more than just slapping a tool on a dog. So one of the biggest revelations that I found was that I was actually trying to train Fraser the walk, and the walk shouldn't have been the training session. That was the exam. What I should have been doing was away from triggers and in a controlled environment, teach them some very clear foundational work. Now, I'll be brutally honest, it wasn't easy. I had to shake off a lot of stuff that I already had in my mind that I thought was the right way to approach this reactivity and how to fix it. And that took quite a bit of time in order to completely change my thoughts and opinions on training and reactivity. It meant giving Fraser some clear boundaries, consistent expectations, and sometimes some uncomfortable feedback. For me, allowing a dog to stay in a constant state of stress, reactivity, and confusion is much crueler than providing them with very clear feedback and structure that they so desperately need. And as I said earlier, I realized that I wasn't meeting my dog's natural genetic needs and drives. So once I started meeting them, he became much calmer, much more satisfied, and a lot happier. So throughout this process, these were the three things which I found were the main pillars as to helping my dog's reactivity. That's teaching a clear yes and a clear no, meeting their genetic needs and making sure they're fulfilled each and every day, and gradual exposure to triggers. So I'm not saying to completely ignore triggers or put them into a stressful situation where there's too many triggers. It's gradually exposing them to little bits, getting closer each time, while also implementing your yes and your no. Very, very clear, effective feedback. And because of this journey and the impact it had on my life and Fraser's life and everybody else's life around me, it made me want to start helping others. Every day I'm going out and I'm seeing reactive dogs everywhere. I'm speaking to hundreds of clients telling me the same story, how their dog's ruining their lives. They're scared to go out. All they want to do is just go to the pub in the summer. And it's sad to hear that every single day. And people need to know that it is fixable. You aren't stuck. You aren't trapped in this endless cycle that you feel like you are in. Unfortunately, there's just so much bullshit which you will see online, and it's from people who are trying to push a certain agenda that makes you feel better inside, but in actual fact, it's not helping your dog. And the majority of the time, it's the uncomfortable stuff which is actually what makes a hell of a difference to improving and helping your dog's behavior. So if you're ready to stop coddling and actually understand your reactive dog, then hit the subscribe button. I'm going to be showing some real strategies that actually work and not just the feel-good fluff. And if you want to dive deeper into these hard truths and how I can actually help you directly, then have a look at my website, click the link in the description, and let's start building the better relationship that you and your dog actually deserve.